is my pleasure to introduce Charles Thomas to you, and I really like to chat with our presenters before I read their bio. And I usually like to do what they ask me to do. So Charles asked me to only read one sentence. So I will read that sentence, but first and foremost, he's quite a long-time member of the League of Women Voters, part of the League of Women Voters Detroit, and the state board, LWVMI. So I will read the one sentence or two. So he is, I'm skipping a lot, and maybe he'll fill in, right, Charles? He'll fill in a little bit. All right. He is founder and director of the voter turnout organization, When You Vote, I Win, building upon the legacy in 1965 by his two aunts, Alice Moore and Denise Holt. And the three of them together continue on in that work today, continuing a legacy of good trouble. So please welcome Good Trouble to our podium, Charles Thomas.
Everybody, good afternoon. First, let me start by thanking you all for allowing me to have this space today. It is an honor, for sure. I remember I was here last year, and Dr. Peter Hammer presented for the month of February, and so to follow in the giant footsteps of somebody like that is quite daunting. But we're going to do what we came to do, or what we've been asked to do. Thank you to Maria ahead of time. She, the president of League of Women Voters of Oakland area. I also have some of my other teammates from the state board that are in the room. I have some of my teammates from the League of Women Voters of Detroit. Wave your hand. Yes, wave your hands in the air. Yes. Thank you all for coming out. And I also have some of my team members from When You Vote, I Win, some of the organization that I founded. If you would, wave your hands. And so let me start the way I generally start these type of sessions. We have something in the faith community in which I am a part of that we call the call and response. And so what I usually like to do is start by having each of you turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, if you would. That's the response part, yes. Neighbor, when you vote, I win. Turn to your neighbor on the other side and say, neighbor, when you vote, I win. All right, give yourselves a hand. All right. Now, let me say that that is generally an uncomfortable space for most people, right? To talk about voting in what might appear to be a selfish way, right? Talking about me winning. But the reality is that when we vote our self-interest, correct? I mean, but for some reason we shy away from that. We feel like that there is something a little, if I can use this, icky about it, talking about me winning. But the reality is that just as you did just now, in order for us to prevail in the democratic spaces, in a democracy, it means we need our neighbors to vote for us to win, correct? But we don't like to present ourselves like that, right? It's uncomfortable. But in starting the organization, founding it, the first thought that came to mind is that we need to shake folks, get them out of their comfort zones, because we found that in the organization before When You Vote, I Win was founded, let me say this. I was a part of an organization, it was the ACLU People Power of Southfield. And we used to be the go-to folks when they were looking for folks to go out and register people, right? We went everywhere. We threw a table up anywhere, along with the League of Women Voters, let me say that as well. Anywhere, everywhere, throw up a table, register people, and what we found is that even though we were registering a lot of people, the percentage of people that were voting was not going up. It just wasn't. I don't know how many found that to be true, that we registering people, but the percentage, now the numbers would grow just as they grew again this year, but the percentages just were not going. And then there's a problem that is inevitable that's out there in front of you. And that is when you reach a point of high saturation, then what do you do? Then what do you do, right? And I was in a conversation with the Michigan Department of State last year before I presented before the state board, which, God bless Maria, she saw that and said, still come anyway. I mean, we didn't like it that much, but come on anyway, right? But when I was presenting, I went to the Department of State and I asked them, what is the percentage of citizens of voting age that are already registered in the state of Michigan? And that number was 97%. I'm going to say it again. 97% of the citizens of voting age in the state of Michigan, MDOS was reporting they are registered. Now, how did that happen? That happened when we passed Prop 2, I believe it was, in 2018. Was it Prop 3? Y'all help me get it right. Was that 3 in 2018? Prop 3 it is. Okay, all right, bingo. Well, when we passed that, it made it so that there was automatic registration, right? That's a good thing that we did. And so when folks go in and they have an engagement with the Secretary of State, they're automatically registered. And so you have people that are registered that don't even know they're registered, right? And I proved that to a few young folks who challenged me and said, I'm not registered. I said, I bet you are. You got a driver's license? Yes, I do. I said, okay, let's pull it up. They're registered. And so then it becomes a question of, okay, if they're registered, and if they're registered at such a high rate, then how do we get them mobilized? It became a conversation about mobilization. And so what we decided then is that we need to shift our focus, shift the majority of our efforts, not all of our efforts, because there's still going to be spaces where folks are not registered. We have the pre-registrations with the 16 to 18-year-olds now, and then the people in these spaces where they're becoming citizens, they need to be registered. But that's not going to be the majority of our work, and we knew that. And so we moved into a mobilization space, which is what When You Vote, I Win is all about. Now, I'm going to say a little bit more about When You Vote, I Win, and then I'm going to show you what it is that we do that is a major portion of our mobilization campaign. What I'm going to say is this, and that is when we engage in these conversations, especially with the language, when you vote, I win. And I always say we, but it was me. If it's bad, it was me, right? That was me. And there was a lot of pushback, a lot of, but again, it was about becoming uncomfortable. But something else that I felt like it was important to push through that messaging is authenticity, right? Because in the back of our minds, we're really thinking, the reason why I am finding myself in these predicaments is because you won't vote. That's what we're thinking, right? If you would just vote, we wouldn't be in the conditions that we're in. But we won't say it. And you don't have to, when I talk to people about when you vote, I win, I say you don't have to use that exact terminology, but in reality, it is a concept that I believe is prevailing. What I found is that, and I'll just speak in terms of the African American community. That's okay, right? I mean, it's Black History Month, and so, 28 days, right? 29 on leap year. But folks would be directed to come into these communities, my community, knock on doors and express to them how they're there to help them. I'm here to help you, by offering you something. But again, in the back of our minds, we're really thinking, no, I need you to vote because it's going to help me, right? And so you move into a more authentic space, right? When you go to them, and again, you don't have to use this language, but if you go to them and you talk about the things that you need, then it changes the dynamic. It lets the person on the porch know that you are, first of all, real, that you jump over some of the suspicion gap. Because if you come and show up at my address and you come and try to convince me that you're there to help me, I'm automatically going to be suspicious. You're here to help me, really? I mean, did somebody call you and tell you I needed help? I mean, how did you figure that that was what was needed? And what makes you think that you're the person that's going to help me? So you have all of these things that you have to leap over, but if you come in a more authentic way and say, no, I'm here because I need your help, then you're going to jump over some of the suspicion gap and you're going to be more authentic. And I tell people all the time that when it's personal, you're going to be more passionate. But if you're also strategic, then you can engage in a conversation about how non-voting is impacting you negatively in a way that speaks to their reality, right? So if I was to go into a community, let's say I went into a seniors complex, and I wanted to talk with them about how not voting was impacting me negatively, I might talk to them about, hey, when people don't vote, I have a real fear of how it's going to impact my Social Security, right? That's being strategic in your presentation, and it's talking about something that is a reality in your life, right? But you're also speaking to a reality that's in their life as well, right? And y'all can ask questions after I'm done if it's not making sense to you. But that's what When You Vote, I Win is all about. It is being authentic. It is being totally honest and transparent, saying I came here because I need your help. I need your help. It is when you vote that I win. That's the only way I can win. If you start voting, you have to start voting. You have to start voting, right? Okay, and so we have one major program that we use. It's called the Value of the Vote program. Now, it's already been said, and you'll see it in one of the videos. I have 2 videos and some slides, and then we'll have Q&A. Is that okay with everybody? Can I keep you awake for that long? I was just saying, I'm not going to say it's going to be exciting, but this is what we're going to do. But this particular presentation is one that we roll out for the most part in schools, in the high schools. We have a program that we go into the high schools called the Value of the Vote program, but it is good for anywhere. It is good for anywhere and everywhere that anybody would like to invite us to come out and do it, just as Maria did on today. It is called the Value of the Vote because what we do is we try to teach young folks especially the value of their vote in America and help them to understand how valuable the vote really is. How America has always understood how valuable your vote really is. All right? And so when we go in, y'all have to excuse me because, I probably talk too much, but when we go in with a DJ to add a musical element to our production. We go in and we bring in other organizations from the community so that they can attach what's going on in the community to the ballot. We always go in with the League of Women Voters. Christine, she gets victimized. She talks about the importance of being an informed voter. That's part of the program. We go in with voting booths. We go in with sample ballots to get the young people more comfortable with what they're going to see when they go into these spaces. But along with that, we build from a historical basis about, again, how important America has always understood that the ballot really is. So if we can go to the next slide. I shouldn't have to say it. It should be clearly obvious. I belong.
If you can see me, the humanity in you, there is just as much humanity in me. I belong. I'm not here as an object.
or as a means to you making your ends. I belong.
I exist as you exist, with the right to righteously coexist.
I belong.
I count if you count. I matter because my matter matters.
I belong.
For this, we are not competing. It's not a race. We're all just in the human race. I belong.
I have the same right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
I belong.
If all men are created equal, I refuse to let you make me lesser than your men. I belong.
And if you cannot see me, then you'll hear me. With the ballot that I put in, I belong.
I count if you count. I matter because my matter matters. I belong.
I vote to say my matters matter. I belong.
I can vote. I will vote. Remembering the time I couldn't vote.
I belong.
I can vote. I will vote. Remembering the time when I couldn't vote. Because I belong.
This is where we start when we present before whomever the audience is. But again, it's most important to me for our young people because we have to my mind, start helping them to understand that when it comes to this space, this America, that they have as much right to it as anybody else does. It is like a demand, so to speak. The same thing that my aunts were doing out there on the bridge. They were making a demand that you can no longer not count me, and I refuse to let you discount me because I belong just as much as you do. And so this is where we start with the young people to put them in that space to understand that this belongs to you just as much as it does to anyone else. And so then we move from there. I don't even know what's on the next slide, though. Not that, right? And we get into, I might have to forward that from here. Did I go too far? Okay, so what is When You Vote, I Win? When You Vote, I Win is a voter mobilization organization built on the story of two Selma foot soldiers who are my aunts. That's what we do. We mobilize voters. That's what we do. Understanding, as I said before, the fact that so many of them are already registered and just aren't voting, we have to get to the point where, because the numbers went up, that we stop celebrating a 20% turnout. We have to, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. But that's what the mayoral turnout was in a couple of the most marginalized cities in the state of Michigan. And I think one was about 21% when I think of the largest city. And then, one of its neighbors was less than 20% for the mayoral race. That we have to get to the point where we stop celebrating that and understand that we need to do something different to get folks engaged. And so again, that When You Vote, I Win language, it's to introduce a different way to have the conversation, right? To introduce something different, because I was just in a conversation with some friends, and we have this text group, and I'm not going to, put anybody out there. And one of the things that I said is that it seems like that we never want to question the methods or the message. We would rather just lead ourselves to believe that things will change if we just keep doing more of the same things that we've been doing. When you vote, I win challenge is the message. What is it? It's built on the story of my aunts who are two Selma, wow, I'm gonna say it if it hurts me. Selma, yes, I know. Selma foot soldiers, oh, there is. Thank you very much. I need to correct that. I appreciate that. Yes, it is, there is a typo. Yes, next slide. Let's get that off the screen. Okay, so again, when you vote, I win is more than a moniker or a name, it's a concept. It seeks to change the way that we engage potential voters on the importance of voting. We seek to accomplish these goals through programming that includes our two primary offerings, which are Afternoon with Two Selma Foot Soldiers, spelled it right there, and Value of the Vote sessions. My aunts were just here in Michigan. They came in for the MLK Day celebration in Southfield. And so that's one of the honors that I have of being able to have living history and say, hey, let's go here, let's go here. And they've been in Michigan several times, and the plan is that they will be back for National Constitution Day, where we will be doing some work with an organization, MCCE, and they'll be introducing a program, and they want to do something at the Capitol in Lansing. And I'll make sure that everybody would like to come is invited. But this is what we do. Afternoon with Two Selma Foot Soldiers, and then the Value of the Vote sessions. You go to the next slide.
It was not easy. It's not easy to remember. I have not walked across that bridge for one time since a Bloody Sunday. We were beaten, tear gassed. And the next thing I knew, there were a couple of guys just had me dragging me. And I didn't know where Alice was.
You don't really see what's waiting for you on the other side until you're far too ahead to turn back, before you can actually see what in 1965 was a sea of troopers waiting for folks on the other side.
We watched our parents be humiliated when they tried to vote. We were fighting for them. We couldn't vote. And when John Lewis came to our town seeking students, I took the flyer. During that time, a lot of demonstrations and protests. We were arrested a lot. We were huddled onto buses and locked up.
They did it because we did not obey their rules. Stop marching, go home, go home. We were out here for a purpose. There was never any violence on our part. It was nonviolent. And to walk across that bridge to see all of these men on horses would whip the cow prods, and it was the drugstore owner, the grocery store owner was recruited.
They were deputized to do this job that they did on us. We were closer up front. Denise being my younger sister, we were supposed to kind of keep up with each other. But at that point, we became separated, and I got very, very angry. I don't remember ever getting that angry before. But what I said in my anger, and I said it, I spoke it, that I will fight more. And that's why we were there for the second and the third march.
I just started talking about this, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. There were no school counselors. We didn't have counselors. We buried it. I could not talk about it.
I'm able to tell the story thinking, believing, and trusting that it will help.
Because of what's happening now. Because we're going backwards. What happened to us back then is happening to us again today. They can't tell you, you can't vote like they told my mother and father. They can't tell you that.
There are going to be so many sophisticated ways out there. Keep up with what's going on in your state, in your city, and become a part. You're not too young to start preparing yourself to lead this country.
When we went to a water fountain, it said colored, whites only. It meant something to us. Your parents or grandparents, great-grandparents, they went through that. You haven't. That's why you don't think your vote counts. That's why you don't think you need to go to the poll. They're trying to take that away from you. They're trying to take us back. We don't want that. You need to go to the poll.
We have done what we have done. Keep your democracy.
And what you all just got to see there, it is actually a trailer for a documentary that is now in the process of being completed on the story from the perspective of two young ladies. We have some people that picked up on the idea, and they are filmmakers, and their thought was, we've always seen the story told from the perspective of the men that were leaders, but none from the women that were also leaders. And so my aunts, 16 and 14 years old, they were folks that were running around knocking on doors in the high school, telling folks, we're going to march. Tipton High School was one of the images that came up on the screen. And so that's something coming soon. As a matter of fact, the expectation is that it will be out by Juneteenth of this year. And we'll have a, what do you call it when you bring people in for the first time? There it is, that's what we're gonna do. And I'm gonna spell Selma right when we do it. But this is what we do, and this is where we start. And one of the things that I found is that the work in Selma of 64 and 65 is not honored as much as it should be when you get in certain spaces. It's just not. There are many of our young people that look at that and they say, well, you know, what's the big deal, right? Where did it get us? Why did they do it like that? I mean, we have a lot of people that criticize the work more than they honor the work. And so what we do with When You Vote, I Win is we not only talk about what happened in 64, 65 Selma, as to what happened, we explain to them why it had to happen, because that's the real question. Why did they have to be out there in the first place? And so this is what we do. We take them back to the very beginning. Not the beginning of the video, though, but, but the beginning. I think the mouse is taking you the wrong way. Let me see if I can do that. From here. Okay, and so we take them back to the beginning. And this is what I call the contradiction that is the source of all conflict. The contradiction which is the source of all of America's conflicts. Y'all know it, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this is where the conflict always begins, right here. This is it was a contradiction. It was great, right? When it was written, it's our Declaration of Independence. Yeah, that all men are created equal. But the problem was, this again was the Declaration of Independence, but when you get to the Constitutional Convention, then you have to have a conversation about, well, how do we make this happen, right? And beyond that, do we really want that to happen? I mean, do we really mean that? Because if we do, it's going to cost us something, right? And the conflict has always been when folks have made a demand on America to live up to this. It is the contradiction that is the source of all conflict. And so when we get to the Constitutional Convention, do I need to forward all of it from now on? This was one of the conversations and one of the main conversations when it came to voting. It's called the property conversation. And believe me, it is very, very, very deeply embedded in our internet. It's going to take you a while if you seek to find it. It was the property conversation. And what that conversation simply was, if I had to boil it down, it was where the debate took place on who should be allowed to vote. And the conversation went something like this. If we let folks who are, I'll just use the word impoverished, vote, then they're going to vote in ways that make it so it's going to cost us some of our wealth, right? But then if we don't let them vote, then they will have no power. And so they went back and forth, and they said the decision was we're not going to make a decision. They threw it to the states, and the states determined who could and could not vote, right? And so something I want to talk about when it comes to this property conversation, the explanation of it has been sanitized. And now they use the word land, right? If you had landowners. But if you stick with that word the way it was originally written, property, y'all know what all property included back then? Somebody tell me, give me, what? Say it again? There you go, it included people. We will have to give up our people? Well, but let's just reduce it to wealth for this conversation. They're going to vote in ways to make it so that we will have to surrender some of our wealth, and so it was thrown to the states, and for the most part, only white male property owners were allowed to vote, right? And so now, because it's already a conflict, it's a conflict within you, right? And so now we have this contradiction. How can we mean what's behind that with this laying over it? How? Let's move on. Okay. So when we talk about the value of the vote, then we go through the Constitution and some of the changes that they had to go through. And so part of it at the convention was the 10th Amendment, which ensconced states' rights, right? States' rights that not only allowed for the states to determine who could and couldn't vote, but it also allowed for slave ownership to continue based upon states' rights, right? That's the 10th Amendment. And then as things progress, though, there's a conversation about, well, and let me not say conversation, there's this conflict where folks are saying, you just can't continue to keep us from voting, can you? And so now you have white males who are pushing back, who don't have property, who don't have wealth, saying you got to allow us to vote. So the last state to allow all white males to vote was North Carolina. Love North Carolina. 1856. That's when the property clause was eliminated and all white males could vote in 1856. And so that was good for what it was good for, but that's not good for everybody. You still have this conflict where people are saying, you need to allow us the right to vote. How are we going to have a say in determining our destiny if we can't get to the ballot, right? And so we roll through these, and so you have the 15th Amendment, and I always put this one up first because it talks about not denying or abridging a citizen's right to vote, and then you have the 14th Amendment that should slide in, and you see that in the first part. Well, it's not the first, but in the middle part, but it talks about equal protection under the law and, folks being citizens, birthright citizenship and all of those things. But you know what came before the 14th and 15th Amendment? Yeah, I heard somebody say it, the 13th. That's right. And you know what the 13th Amendment has in it? The one exception to slavery is what? Anybody know? The one exception to slavery, anybody know what that is? It's in the 13th Amendment. Incarceration, imprisonment. That is correct. And so what happens is that, they put all these things in place. They put, I'll call this thing, the 13th Amendment in place. Before we say you can vote, we're going to put something in place to make it so that we can still impinge upon those rights, which is incarceration, right? And so what happened right after these that are Reconstruction Amendments were put in place, you had that 13th Amendment, and then you have mass incarceration, right? Did y'all know that before, I probably shouldn't say y'all while I'm on camera, did you all know that prior to Reconstruction, the majority of people in prison did not look like me? They didn't. You know why? Because you do not lock up your workforce. You don't do it. Why would you don't lock up your? But these are I'm telling you all these things. But this is what we're explaining to the young people as we go through this process. You don't lock up your workforce, and so you create things like vagrancy laws. And vagrancy just means I'm homeless for the most part, right? But I just got freed from the plantation. Where is my home? So you do these sweeps and you lock up people and you have mass incarceration. And then they created this thing called the prisoner leasing program. That's where the states lease the prisoners back to the plantation owners that they were just freed from. And the plantation owners loved it. Why? Because now I'm no longer responsible for their health and well-being, whether they eat. No, they come and work the field in the morning, and it's on the state to provide for them in the evening. They loved it. So there were always these things put in place, and there's always this conflict and based upon that contradiction. And then we also had Jim Crow laws, jelly beans and literacy tests and poll taxes and stuff and foreign languages and just stuff, right? But these are all things that are put in place, again, to keep people from the ballot. Because we understand this is America making a statement without saying it, that we understand how valuable your vote really is. We'll do anything and everything to keep you from being able to vote because it's going to impinge on our right to just own massive amounts of wealth. That sounds like the day, don't it? Yeah. That's right. Go ahead, next slide. And this is what we try to get the children to understand. This right to vote is the basic right without all of the rights meaningless. It gives people as individuals control over their own destinies. That was Lyndon B. Johnson. He had a lot of really good sayings. That's another one of them. And so as we roll along, right, now, there's a whole lot of conflicts now. Okay, one of them is, one of the arguments that was made in the women's suffrage movement was, how can you allow black males the right to vote, even though they really can't because of Jim Crow, but how can you allow black males the right to vote and you won't let us vote? How? So, but that's just one of the arguments that were made. And so you had the women's suffrage movement. And so now, at this point, essentially, we can all vote on paper. Essentially, we can all vote. But, and we go through these things, and this is when we roll the kids back into that 64, rolling into that civil rights and voting rights space. Now we've taken you back to help you understand why it is that this happened, and we bring them back to that space where the civil rights movement actually took place. So you had Brown versus Board of Education, segregated schools. We'll run through these real quick. The bus boycott in Montgomery. You have 60 black pastors that formed the SCLC. The Little Rock, not the Little Rock Nine, the 9 black students, that is the Little Rock Nine, excuse me, that were harassed, just trying to go to school. Go ahead. You have the Civil Rights Act of 1957 signed into law. Just pause right there. Can we vote? Yeah. Can we? Still can't vote. Okay, keep going. In 1960, the Greensboro Four, just fighting for the right to just be served. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges. You can keep going. And this, we always pop this in here. If we want a close in, you can see Ruby meant business. She was there for business with her little briefcase and that look on her face like, I'm here for business. I don't really know what's going on, but I'm here for business. So then you have the Freedom Riders. How many of you know that John Lewis started off as a Freedom Rider? All right, okay, moving on. This is a beaut, right? I don't even need to say what it is, but how many of you also knew that the most up-to-date and modern building in the city of Selma has the name on it, George Wallace. It is the George Wallace Community College. Just saying. Okay, moving on. We have Martin Luther King, the March on Washington, and again, we're just rolling them through the history to bring them back to that place where they really have dismissed Medgar Evers, killed in his driveway, the bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church, Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, these young men who were killed for registering voters. Jimmy Lee Jackson, he was the young deacon who was shot to death, and it was when he was killed, that's when the decision was made, we're going to march. We're going to march. You keep rolling, and then we have Bloody Sunday, Turnaround Tuesday, and then the march that made it all the way from Selma to Montgomery. Only 300 made that march all the way from Selma to Montgomery, and my aunts just happened to be 2 of them. And we bring up Viola Liuzzo, I apologize, who is murdered by the KKK just for giving people a ride back. My aunt, one of the 16-year-olds, she was next in line to get a ride when they were informed that Viola had been murdered. Then you have the signing of the Voting Rights Act in '65. We can vote? I think we can. I mean, okay, you keep going. Martin Luther King assassinated in 1968. And I'm not sure if there are more slides after this. So this is what we give to the kids, right? And we give it to them in ways, again, that explain not just what happened, but why that had to happen. How America has always understood that your vote is valuable. And if for no other reason, to understand that it is how they kept you, or keep us, let me say, because it's still going on, from that very first thing that they wrote. When Martin Luther King gives his speech on the mall in Washington, that's one of the things he says. He says, hey, we're here to cash a check. And we refuse to believe that, you know, the banks of America are bankrupt. You have to excuse me, I'm paraphrasing. But he gets to a certain juncture and he says, we're here to demand that America lives up to the meaning of its creed. And what was that creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It is the contradiction that has led to all the major conflicts in America, and it is still a contradiction that we're dealing with now. I'll stop right there and let you all ask questions. No questions, all right. Let's have tangerines, yes. The biggest reason is because they don't feel like their vote matters. That's the biggest reason. Yes. Many, yes.
But also, when you're talking to the young people, they also talk about, well, no one in my family does. So it's not just this generation, it's generational in some of these communities.
Yes. And go ahead.
Talk to them and they say, well, no one else in my family votes, why should I?
Yeah, and Christine, she has the benefit of probably talking to more of the young people than I do when we go into these spaces, because I'm always frantic. I'm all over the place, right? And so I have a lot of great team members that get to engage these young people and engage in these conversations. And and I want to say too, that's one of the other things about that language, when you vote, I win. Everybody cannot vote, right? Who can't vote? Somebody help me. Non-citizens, incarcerated citizens, children. That's right. And so what this particular language does is it allows everybody to have a voice. For we want young people to leave our space and go and get in the face of their parents and ask them, why are you not voting? The only way I can prevail in this process is if you vote. I can only win if you vote. So that's one, and we don't want to get all up in their face. I need to stop, be careful the way I say things because the camera's rolling, but y'all know what I'm saying. Y'all know what I'm saying. Yes, I have like 4 people, who wants to go first? That's how we do it. Okay.
My question is, how can the League of Women Voters support what you're doing? What kind of partnerships exist now here in Oakland and in Detroit and Wayne County and state? Because what you're doing is so incredible. Wonderful.
Our greatest roadblock is access. We've been in a lot of schools. We went in, one year, it might have been last year, we went into all 3 Rochester schools. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. It was fantastic. It was phenomenal. Those kids were so excited. It's access, though. It's access to not just spaces like this, but access to these schools and other venues. Now, we're about to introduce another program that is going to incentivize conversations. But that's coming. But yeah, access is the greatest thing. Wherever you are, we'll load up the truck like the Beverly Hillbillies and we'll be there. We've been to Benton Harbor, we've been to Saginaw, we've been to Grand Rapids, we'll go. You just set it up and I'll come with that little bag and we'll be there. So that would be the biggest thing. We will go to middle schools. We prefer high schools. Why? Because not only is it the pre-registration conversation, but many of them will be voting in the next elections. We need to have these conversations now, right? So yes, high schools. And we'll talk, okay? Yes.
So you do a wonderful job of talk about the history from 60 years ago and before that. But you try to bring it up to date in terms of voter ID laws and things like that, and try to explain the nuances of that issue that currently is in front of us?
That is, well, let me say 2 things about that. One is that from a 501c3 standpoint, we have to be very careful. There are some rules to the road when it comes to that. If you are, the facts. There you go. Now, this is where we invite other organizations to come in. Just like Christine comes in and talks about Vote 411, we have one gentleman that, he's been in tow with us and he talks about poll worker recruitment. This is where we ask other organizations to come in and say, hey, we're gonna give you 5 minutes up on the stage, talk about this so that they can make the connection. So as an organization, we don't really get into that. And it's kind of for the most part, a newer thing, right? What we're dealing with right now. But we are very open to that as long as everybody understands the rules of the road when it comes to us, that they can only give the facts. We can't, that's all. Yes, and we are very welcoming when it comes to giving people space on our program. And let me say one other thing about our program before I and I have 3 more questions. We also collaborate with the Michigan Department of State. If we are given the amount of time that is really necessary for our program, it takes about an hour and a half. And 30 minutes for that, 30 to 40 minutes is a mock election where we allow the kids to run the election. So I'll put some slides up about what the Department of State does and what the Secretary of State does. And then after that, we'll have somebody that'll be selected as the Secretary of State. We'll have somebody that'll be the city clerk. We'll have poll workers. And they choose the issue and they vote on it. We have ballots that are passed out, ballots for early voting, ballots for absentee, and we'll go through that whole process. And like I said, we have the booths and everything. That's not a part of this particular conversation when it comes to that mock election, but we'll go through the whole process. Okay, it's 40 days before the election. Check your ballot. If you have a ballot for absentee voting, you can vote now, and the kids vote, right? And then, okay, all right, it's 9 days before the election. It's early voting. You have an early voting ballot? Vote. All right, same day election, you can vote. Then we go out, tally it out, and do the whole process. So that's one of the other things that we do. We do have that collaboration with Michigan Department of State. And you'll see on some of our videos that, and some of our literature that we've actually had Jocelyn that has come in and conducted some of these. A Go-Go has come in and conducted some of these. And if they're really, really hard up, they say, Charles, will you do it? And so I do know how to conduct those as well. Yes. $100,000%. The documentary will be free to anyone, and if it can be ingrained into curriculum, 100,000%. That's exactly what the use of it will be, for sure. I'm gonna come to you, but I think I had two people on this side first. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My name's Ann. Member of Voters Not Politicians. VNP. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I guess you said somebody could come in and talk about this petition, this ballot petition
Mm-hmm.
At your organization. But I think it's really important that young people understand what this will do to majority
Yes.
of people.
Yes.
Who, you know, they just figure their old registration's fine and they show up to vote and, you know, they don't have the proper ID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If this passes, it's voted on in 26, so it's very concerning.
Oh, yeah, that's 100% agree with you. Yeah, yeah. And let me say this about that. Like I said, because we're 501c3, we can't come down one way or the other. And so with the Decline to Sign campaign, the League of Women Voters is also involved in that campaign, as well as I was in a meeting today with Mariah, so I'm very familiar with VNP and the work and that work. Promote the Vote, Michael Davis. But when it comes to the particular campaign, what the rules of the road or the law actually says is that if you're a 501c3 and you want to engage in that, then you have to have a ballot committee. And that costs money, that's the first thing. Or you can attach yourself to someone else who has a ballot committee. Most of the organizations are attaching themselves to Promote the Vote's ballot committee. And that's what I'm saying, there's some rules to the road here. And so we could have a conversation where people stand up and just talk about, if this happens, this is what will happen, right? And the other thing I will say about that is that when they had the testimony for the 100-word summary, go back and look at the video. I was there. I testified. You can go back and look and see what I said, because I do know. I do know, and I'll give you a little bit of what I said, and that is that when it comes to the representation of birth certificates, for folks in my community, many of them were intentionally inaccurate, right? Because folks did not want to, I'll just keep it real for the camera's sake. If you were a property owner and you were engaged with somebody that was your property and they had a child, you did not want that child traced back to you. So the birth certificates were intentionally inaccurate in many ways. When it comes to my birth certificate, now that wasn't an issue then because that's a little bit further back than I go, but my birth certificate, it's a little bit, you know what I mean? It's a smidge, right? But when it comes to my birth certificate, when my father passed, I'm a junior, and I took his death certificate to the Social Security Administration. They told me I have to change my name. They said, because my father, when he was born Charlie Thomas Sr. When he joined the Army, they told him there's no such name as Charlie. From now on, your name is Charles. But the birth record doesn't match that. So now I'm a Charles, I'm a junior, and they say, well, if you want to be a junior, you got to change your name. Yeah, yes. But I'm just saying that to say that it could have been a problem for me just because my birth certificate says Charlie. My birth certificate says Charles. His says Charlie as my father, spelled Charley. On his birth certificate, his name is spelled Charlie, and the government told him that your name ain't either one of those, right? So anyway, I get it. I get how easily, and not just for women, but because we could talk about all the name changes. But okay, I went too far with that. Next question. Mm-hmm. First with this, but that's too long. But I've had that conversation many times. Now, there was another riff that I did because, every time you find me, I'm not just talking, but I'm talking too much. But it was a riff that I did in front of the Spirit of Detroit. And, things just come to me, so I just kind of say them. And I said this. I said, if somebody told you that they were coming to steal your TV, you'd put an alarm on your house. If they told you that they were coming to steal your car, you'd put an alarm on that as well. If they told you they were coming to steal your bike, you'd put a chain on it. If they told you that they were coming to steal your dog, you'd put a fence around your house to try to protect it. But you value your vote less than that? And so this is kind of like, but the image, and that's actually when You Vote, I Win was born. It's when I said that. But the challenge is helping people understand. And I'll just give you one scenario where like a light bulb came on for some kids because of something that happened in a conversation. I do a lot of work with DPSCD in their summer programs. And I was in a conversation with some kids about helping them to understand how government works when it comes to the branches. And we talked about, or I talked about, the branches when it comes to the federal level, and how you have the same thing at the state level, and also how you have the same thing on a city level. And the father looked at me and he said, oh, now I get it. The mayor is like the president of the city. And I said, yeah, I never thought about it like that, but yeah, that's about right. That's about right. So when you, and it doesn't answer your question about vote not counting, but we also have this thing where people have been taught to focus only on presidential elections. Prior to Reconstruction, more folks voted in midterms than they did for presidential, prior to Reconstruction. So there was also this effort to lead people to believe that not only was their vote not important, but it definitely wasn't important when you get down to the state and local level. And so we did a campaign, and I have some flyers here for it. It is called Voter Turnout 0.20. Because if you look, there's this solid, stagnant, unmoving, unflinching, unwavering, and all the other adjectives you want to come up with, number. There was a gap between the number or percentage of folks that voted in the presidential elections and those that voted in the midterms. And it's like a solid 20%. And so we decided, well, let's ask why. I mean, you're already voting. What sense does it make for you to be voting and just decide, well, this one, it doesn't matter, I'll sit out. And so we asked a question, and we got some answers, and some of them were from folks in the advocacy space who were honest enough to say, no, we don't vote in those midterms. So a lot of it is education as well, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of times it takes more time than you have in the moment. But again, when you get back to the When You Vote, I Win conversation, if you can express to them something that is real to you. One of the examples that I use many times is, it costs less to put a person through college for a year than it does to incarcerate them for a year. And I just feel like my tax dollars are better spent putting a kid through college than it is to send them to jail. And so again, this is you talk about being strategic in your conversations, and and talking about things that impact you, that you really believe impacts them as well. That's part of the strategy in how these conversations we believe they should play out. I don't know if any of that was helpful. Oh, sure, absolutely. That's what we got to stop celebrating 20%. Martin Luther King would be rolling over in his grave. I have the young lady back here in the back that has raised her hand about 7 times and looked at me very frustrated because I still have not called her. Oh, your turn. Well, let's start with who has the final say. The principals. The principals have the final say. So I'll just use Detroit as an example. I have talked to the, what is her position, the president of the school board? You talk to members of the board, and they all say, we want you to not only do this, but expand it. And so I can give you a list of schools that we've been into, but one of the other things about our program is that our goal is to go into as many high schools as we can every year, once a year. Why? Because when we go in, we ask for the juniors and seniors. Now, when you talk to the juniors and seniors, the seniors will be cycling out. The juniors will become seniors. And so for these new seniors, it will be reinforcement. For the juniors, it will be all fresh to them. And so we look to go in every year, wherever we can go, but I can't give you a list of places that we have been, because we definitely like to go to places that we haven't been first before we go back to the schools that we've already been to. Say it again? Glad you're here, because I would have messed that up. but I will say this, yeah, at the end of the day, what I've been told is that it is the decision of the principal. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you getting a lot more pushback as far as people saying, we don't want you to come into our school and talk about this? If they don't want me to come, they've never said it. Right? That's all I can say. But we haven't, as far as being verbalized, but I do feel like that a lot of the reticence is based upon exactly what you've expressed. And I will also say that, you're just going to have to tell me no. That's how I feel about it, because we believe that this is like a vital program or programming, and we have some other people that are attaching themselves to the work that we do that are, am I doing something wrong?
Well, you might want to mention the Florida experience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so some of those kids that you saw on the bridge were Florida kids. As a matter of fact, I think all the shoots where the kids were walking across the bridge were kids from Florida. And everybody knows the environment in Florida. And so what, I didn't hear that. Should I cover the mic? But what happened is that one of my aunts in Atlanta was approached by a pastor in Florida. And one of the things that they've done is they have made the declarative statement that you might be able to tell us what we can and cannot do in our schools, but you can't tell us what we can and cannot do in our churches. And so they have brought these kids in to these church environments, and they continue to pound in them the history. And they decided to put a trip together and asked my aunt asked both of them, only one could make it, if they would come in and give them a tour. And so it was really a fantastic experience where folks had to go outside of the schools, right, in order to make these things happen. And sometimes that might be the way that it will have to happen even in Michigan. But yeah, it wasn't you that asked the question. I know I'm looking at you, but it was you that asked the question. You said something and I didn't hear it. But yes, but it was that was the way that it had to happen. And we did go, and we had, like I said, a really good experience. But let me tell you one of the other things that happened while we were there. So we're there, and we did the Selma and Montgomery thing. And if you ever get a chance to go to Montgomery and go to the legacy museums, it is life-changing. It is a must. But anyway, we were staying at a hotel in Montgomery, and we were there for 3 or 4 days. It was a number of days. And in the hotel, every evening we would have a debrief with the kids. And we're in the lobby having this conversation, and all of a sudden, ice starts coming. I mean, cubes of ice throwing into the center of our conversation. Off in the shadows, back where you couldn't see them, but they're throwing ice cubes into the middle of our conversation because they're upset about what we're talking about. And we never were able to discover who it was. We had to have folks, some of the grown-ups that were there, go and post up on different levels across from where the ice cubes were coming from, just to watch, to see what they could see. And, but it's just to say that pushback for sure, anger, whitewashing, all of those things, but that's why it is even more vitally important that we teach this history. I will say this, and I don't want to get too far, outside of the lane that I should be in, but I'm a man of many sayings. I have phrases and sayings for just about everything. Even when it comes to I Belong, I don't think I said it, but that's a poem that I wrote that somebody picked up on, one of our teammates in California. She raised $25,000 and hired a film crew because she looked at that poem and thought it was powerful. And I think, yeah, I wrote it. I don't know how much you did. But anyway, just getting back to, if I can find my way back to where I was, somebody might have to somebody might have to help me find what I was talking about. But ice cube, yeah. One of the sayings that I created and I trademarked it is, somebody's going to have to help me with it. It's, I'll look it up. It's on my phone. But anyway, next question. Mm-hmm.
With a statistic, if you presented a statistic, which I don't know, of how many young people vote of a certain age category versus older people that vote, and then if you just said to them, I'm assuming that these younger people don't vote in the same percentage as the older people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you presented, like, okay, so just 10% of you vote, well, 30% of this other age group votes.
Mm-hmm.
This older group that has messed up things. So maybe if all of you young people voted, you would outweigh this older group.
Those are facts. And when we do the presentation, the MDOS presentation, that's one of the slides. That's one of the slides that's in there. Yes, it is an absolute fact. So let me tell you what it is. The saying is, America has always understood the greatest threat to wealth and power is the ballot. The greatest threat to wealth and power. And that's all of what was up there. It's always understood that the greatest threat to wealth and power is your ballot. That's on T-shirts that I made. It's a shameless plug. But and then it ends by saying, sunrise, June 21st, 1788, sunset, not ever. So there you go. Yes.
Do you mind just detailing some specifics about how you charge for your high school program? Because any of us could walk into our high school, ask the principal
It's free. We do have some partners that assist us with funding, and so we always position ourselves to where it costs the schools nothing. And if we put on our entire program, like I said, we come in with a DJ because we felt like it was important to have a musical element. We have goodie bags. We have Q&A where we go out and get McDonald's gift cards and do a Q&A after just to see how much. And they do a pretty good job. You'll see some of that in the videos on our website. But all of this is a part of it because, it's more important to go. And Scott, who's on the board, he'll tell you that I have done this work underwater for some times. To me, the work is more important than what it costs me. And at the same time, I'm not trying to live underwater either. But when we first started, there was nothing there. And, we went out at a cost, and the cost was, me being underwater. But the work is that important to me.
So does your staff like to be in touch with the teacher that runs the program? And do you have a one-page description that we could share? I mean, this is fantastic, but how do you describe it?
I don't think we have a one-pager. She'll take care of that. Yes. GOTVMI.org. We were able to secure that. GOTVMI.org, short for Get Out the Vote, Michigan. Yeah, it's pretty jazzy. I mean, we had a team that got together. I think it's pretty jazzy. It's still a work in progress, but most everything, even the videos that I talk about where you can see what it looks like when we go into the other schools, we felt like it was important to in the beginning, capture these things on video because they become our business card. If you go in there and you can just, if they click the link and send it to them, and they can see what we do in these schools. GOTVMI.org. All right, it's time for me to go. I'm being excused. Thank you all.